They came as traders, they left as traffickers. History remembers the Vikings as explorers, conquerors, and warriors. But there was another side to them, one that smelled not of glory, but of blood, sweat, and iron. Behind the sagas of Valhalla and vengeance, there was a market where men, women, and children were sold, not for honor, but for silver. And at the heart of that trade stood the most powerful city on earth, Constantinople, the jewel of Byzantium. Here, the Viking longships didn't raid, they delivered. If you think you know the Vikings, stay until the end, because the truth behind their eastern trade will change the way you see them forever. Long before the word Russia meant a nation, it meant something else, the Rus. That's what the Slavs called the Norsemen, who came sailing down the great rivers of Eastern Europe, the Volga, the Dnieper, carving trade routes that linked the Baltic to the Black Sea. They were merchants, they were raiders, they were middlemen between two worlds, the icy north and the shining empire of the east. Every spring, they launched their ships. Honey, furs, iron, and slaves. Thousands of captives taken from raids across Eastern Europe, Slavs, Balts, Finns, were dragged through the forests, down the rivers, and across the steppes. Their destination, the Queen of Cities, Constantinople. The Byzantines had a name for these Norse traders, the Varangians. To them, they were both barbarian and indispensable. And the Varangians had learned something powerful, that silver from the east was worth far more than blood spilled in the west. But how did this journey end? What awaited them beyond the Black Sea? Imagine this, a bustling square beneath the golden domes of Constantinople. The scent of incense drifts through the air, the clang of coins echoes beneath marble arches, and in one shadowed corner, chains, tears, and silence. This was the market of flesh, what Byzantine chroniclers called the Valley of the Lamentations. Here, men and women, children and eunuchs were paraded like cattle, their worth measured not by their will, but by their usefulness. A 10-year-old child sold for 10 nomismata, roughly 4.5 grams of gold, about $500 and 600 USD today. A strong adult man fetched 20 nomismata, $1,000 to 1,200 USD. A castrated boy, destined to serve in silence, cost 30 nomismata, or about $1,800 US dust. But an adult eunuch, prized for loyalty, feared for influence, commanded 50 nomismata, nearly $3,000 USD in today's money. The Byzantines didn't ask where their slaves came from, only that they weren't Christian. Pagan blood meant profit. And the Vikings, known here as Varangians, supplied that demand with ruthless efficiency. They sailed down the rivers of Eastern Europe, their long ships heavy with captives from Slavic villages, Baltic forests, and even their own northern raids. They traded flesh for silk, furs for silver, souls for spice. In Constantinople's glittering markets, they learned an eternal truth. Faith could be bent, but silver was sacred. Yet beneath the empire's splendor, the whispers never stopped. For every gold coin that changed hands, there was a mother who would never see her child again. The system was efficient, horrifyingly so. Viking raiders struck coastal villages and river settlements across Eastern Europe. Men were killed. The young and strong were bound. The captives were marched for weeks, shackled, starved, and stripped of names. Those who survived reached Kiev, the Varangian trading hub. There, slave caravans joined the great river fleets sailing south. Through the Dnieper's rapids, across the Black Sea, the ships came. Long ships transformed into cargo vessels of flesh. In Constantinople, Byzantine officials taxed each transaction. The state made money on the suffering of strangers. And still, the demand grew. Because in Byzantium, an empire of palaces, soldiers, and eunuchs, there was always room for more slaves. Domestic servants, laborers, soldiers, concubines. And, most prized of all, the castrated boys destined for the imperial court. Each voyage brought more. Each sail, more profit. It was commerce in its purest form and its darkest. But beneath the gold and silk, something was changing among the Vikings themselves. The same city that bought their captives would soon buy their loyalty. From slavers to soldiers. Some of the same Norsemen who sold captives to Byzantium returned as mercenaries in imperial service. The legendary Varangian Guard. Elite warriors. Personal protectors of the Byzantine emperor. The Byzantines trusted them more than their own generals. Why? Because these Norsemen, bound by oath, not politics, would die before betraying their paymaster. They became infamous, axe-bearing giants, feared in the palace corridors. Some chroniclers even said they made better bodyguards than Christians themselves. It was a strange evolution. The same rivers that once carried slaves now carried soldiers sworn to protect the man who bought them. History rarely draws clean lines between villain and hero, and the Varangians were proof, men who could both sell and save lives in the same city. Yet, in that contradiction, something deeper brewed: identity. Were they still Vikings? Or had Constantinople made them something else entirely? Constantinople was a mirror, and when the Vikings looked into it, they saw a reflection of their own ambition. They came from wooden halls into marble palaces, from mead-soaked feasts into the ritual of the Orthodox Church, from pagan myth into imperial pageantry. In Byzantium, they found not gods, but systems, not chaos, but power, and it changed them. They adopted Greek words, Byzantine customs, gold-threaded tunics instead of furs. Some even stayed, married locals, converted to Christianity, and rose through the imperial ranks. But beneath the elegance, their trade still stank of blood. For centuries, Viking merchants kept bringing slaves to the city, even after they stopped calling themselves pagans, even after they carved crosses into their shields. Christianity had arrived, but the silver still sang. Before we continue, if you're still watching, you're the kind of person who digs deeper than the myths. If you want more stories like this, the ones that history tried to bury, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. We uncover the secrets that textbooks leave out, from betrayals in royal courts to the crimes that built empires. Now, back to the markets of Constantinople. Most of what we know about the Viking slave trade comes not from Norse sagas, but from their enemies. An Arab diplomat named Ahmad ibn Fadlan wrote of the Rus, "They are the filthiest of God's creatures." He described them trading slaves, sacrificing captives, and bathing in the same water they washed corpses in. To him, the Viking merchant was both terrifying and pitiful, a man without mercy or shame. Byzantine documents, meanwhile, record the taxes levied on slaves brought by foreign traders, many identified as Rus. Even Christian monks in the empire wrote of ships arriving filled with captives from the north. Archaeologists later found the evidence to match the words, Viking hoards buried with Byzantine coins, proof of the profits earned from human lives. The trade was no myth. It was a machine, built of wood, iron, and desperation. But like all machines, it could break. And soon it did. By the 11th century, the world was shifting. The Viking Age was ending. Scandinavia had converted to Christianity, and kings wanted legitimacy, not looting. The Byzantine Empire, too, was changing. Slavery began to give way to serfdom. The markets grew quieter. The rivers that once echoed with the splash of oars now carried pilgrims, not prisoners. Trade continued, but the trade in people diminished. Still, the echoes remained. Because empires rarely erase their sins, they bury them under marble, under prayer, under time. And yet, every coin unearthed from a Viking hoard, stamped with the cross of Byzantium, reminds us the path to civilization was paved with chains. When we talk about the Vikings, we talk about bravery, exploration, discovery. We forget the cost. Constantinople may have transformed them, but it also exposed them. It revealed how easily the same hand that holds a sword can hold a contract. The Norse became merchants, diplomats, even emperor's guards. But beneath it all, the ghosts of those they sold followed them. In the sagas, you'll find no mention of the slave markets, no verses for the bound or broken, only silence and silver. That's the truest scandal of all. Not that the Vikings traded slaves, but that history tried to forget they did. If you walk through Istanbul today, the valley where those markets once stood is gone. No plaques, no ruins, just the hum of a city that's forgotten what was bought and sold beneath its streets. But history doesn't stay buried. It waits, in records, in relics, in stories like this. The Vikings called Constantinople Miklagard, the great city. And it was, a city of wonders and of wounds. So when we celebrate the courage of the Vikings, remember also their contradictions. The explorers who charted seas, the traders who sold souls, the mercenaries who protected the emperor whose markets they once supplied. Because the story of the Vikings in Constantinople isn't about heroes or villains. It's about us, about how far people will go for power, wealth, and survival. And that truth, like silver, never rusts. If you've made it this far, thank you for sailing through history's darker waters. If you found this story eye-opening, like this video, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the shadows of the past. Next, watch the video on your screen, The Spanish Queen Who Orchestrated Witch Hunts. It's another story of power, cruelty, and the human hunger that shaped history. Until then, remember, every empire is built on secrets, and every secret leaves a shadow.